Moonies. Yoo-hoo. Okay, audio's good. Sweet. Okay. Hey guys. Yoo-hoo. Wow. Hello, Moonies. It's me, Moonlight-chan, and Happy New Year. Yay. Woo. Happy New Year, guys, and thank you for joining our stream. Woo! So, for the month of January, I just brought myself a new book for Christmas, and I thought, why not read it to my dear Moonies? It's called A Control of Candy Jones. It's a biographical memoir describing the life of a famous model by the name of Jessica Wilcox, who went by the name Candy Jones. Now, here's the thing. I've looked up this story before purchasing it. Basically, this beautiful model, Jessica Wilcox, she has a split personality named Candy Jones, and she would have literal gaps in her memory of where this other personality would take over and perform government missions. Jeez. The way I see it is very indicative. She has dissociative identity disorder, and Jessica did admit she was abused by her mother as a child. And honestly, this is fine proof of mkultra mind control, aka Project Bluebeam. For those unaware, mkultra programming, aka Project Bluebeam, was an American government experiment where unwilling participants were forcefully abused so the government can create alternate personalities that can complete missions for them and obey the government damn it, sorry. Basically, the government wanted to create split personalities that will be completely loyal to them, as well as perform missions without the subject remembering them. So, honestly, I really believe that Candy Jones, aka Jessica Wilcox, must have been a victim of mkultra mind control. And furthermore, years ago, I saw a documentary made by Jay Myers. Basically, wealthy families, especially those of the elite, they tend to abuse their children and create alternate personalities so their descendants will be cold, unfeeling psychopaths. You're free to believe what you want, but, a good amount of CEOs tend to be sociopaths and psychopaths. And I really believe the elites are psychopathic as well. I remember around 2014, someone of the famous DuPont family was charged with pedophilia and abusing their own children. But they were given leniency and never arrested. The judge claimed that sending the DuPont pedophile would be too overbearing for a wealthy man such as him. It's really depressing. Nevertheless, oddly enough, I heard about this book, The Control of Candy Jones, on a 4chan post. And then I went on a huge rabbit hole and I decided to look into it. Cease. Nevertheless, thank you for joining my stream. And let's read along this interesting story. Woo! So this book, it was actually published by Playboy, which is surprising, very, very much. And I won't go into too much detail, but did you know that Hugh Hefner had FBI connections? It really makes you think, huh? if you put it into that perspective, maybe he was using some of the Playboy girls as, how do I put this? Maybe sex kitten programming, to coax secrets out of their targets. Just saying. Anyway, let's move on. The Control of Candy Jones by Donald Bain, published by Playboy Press. I gotta say, Moonies, I'm trying to get back into streaming, so sorry for the stuttering. Oof. I hope you guys can hear me well. Jeez. Ah, jeez. Guys, can you hear me well? Anyway. Well, let's begin. Forward. I have come to know Candy Jones and John Nebo well over the last several years, both as an invited guest on a radio program and as a psychiatrist. As part of their efforts to unravel many perplexing questions about Candy's past, they asked me to examine her, especially in regard to her capacity to be hypnotized. After a detailed clinical history, we evaluated her extensively, utilizing standard psychological testing, including the dramatic apperception test and a Rorschach's. Jeez. These indicated that she suffered episodic periods of stress, but not at the psychotic or schizophrenic level. Oh, and just so you know, Donald Bain, is an alias of Candy Jones, psychiatrist. And I believe John Nebels was Jessica's late husband. And they both ran a radio show during the 70s. As of now, Jessica Wilcox, aka Candy Jones, I believe she passed away around 1990. But she was a famous model. And she also published many fashion magazines. And even opened a fashion school. Cease. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Well, before we continue, I wanted to show you guys something. Ta-da! Here's my Etsy store, Moonlightopia. Just type in etsy.com/Moonlightopia. I'm constantly adding new products to it. I just added some, my Fate fan art merch to it, as well as some Land of the Lustrous merch. And make sure you stop by and check it out. It's etsy.com/Moonlightopia. Moonlightopia with 2 eyes. And here's my ArtStation store. Just type in Moonlight Artist ArtStation. You should be able to find it. My art store is connected to my ArtStation profile. And last month we got into NFTs, so they're on Rarible. So just look up rarible.com/moonlightartists or just rarible.com/moonlight. You should be able to find these. Or better yet, just check our All My Links profile or our Linktree profile. All of our art stores are there. And let's see. Oh yeah, I also have a spring store. Also on our All My Links profile, which is down in the description below. Woo! And I also have a Gumroad, but it's not that many products on there. But we will be adding some more this year in the future. Woo! Woo! Alright. Oh yeah, and don't forget to donate. We have a Cash App, a Venmo, and a PayPal, and a donation alerts, and a Streamlabs alerts, and Power Chat. They're in the description below. Well, if you're watching us on YouTube. And they're also on our All My Links profile, and yeah. Cease. Hold on a minute. So far, my New Year is going okay. I had a fun time over the Christmas holiday. What about you, chat? Wait a minute. All right, so back to the story. We then employed a clinical measurement of hypnotizability, the hypnotic induction profile, HIP, in order to assess Candy's trance capacity. This test has been developed and standardized over 10 years in a large population of patients and seems to reliably indicate the extent to which an individual is hypnotizable. Such tests are important because hypnosis is a capacity which individuals possess to varying degrees, and which changes little in a given person with the passage of time. Hypnosis is not a quality projected onto someone by a hypnotist. Rather, it is an ability inherent in the individual. Candy's response to the hypnotic induction profile indicated that she is extremely hypnotizable, and this outcome was confirmed independently by 2 other psychiatrists. Her trance capacity places her in a small group of highly hypnotizable individuals who comprise no more than 10% of the population. This high hypnotizability makes plausible her capacity to regress to earlier times in her life and to act as though she were in the present. It is also consistent with her global amnesia, that is, her complete forgetting of many events in her life. Such a distinction is important because, as a rule, those who have a lower capacity for hypnosis are far less susceptible to external influence of the kind described in this book. For example, John Nebel's response to the hypnotic induction profile indicated that he is at best minimally hypnotizable. Had he reported about himself such a story of secret influences and amnesia for vast portions of his life, and had he claimed to be experienced spontaneous spurts of regression, I would have been quite skeptical. Let's see. Hypnosis, like many medical techniques, can be used for both good and evil. Honestly, is hypnotism really effective? I don't really see myself falling for hypnosis. Hypnosis, a hypnotized individual has the ability to make choices about complying with any suggestion. However, the more hypnotizable a person is, the more inclined he will be to comply with signals or commands, and to suspend his usual critical judgment. Slipping into the trance state is something like shifting into high gear in an automobile. Any change in the direction of motion is magnified. Thus, many individuals have been helped considerably by learning about and by utilizing their own trance capacities. At the same time, our research has indicated that some highly hypnotizable people will do relatively uncharacteristic things while in a trance state. In one experiment, a highly hypnotizable subject entered a trance state and was told to believe there was a communist conspiracy to take over the television networks. Well, it's not much of a conspiracy. Basically, Hollywood is in bed with communism. I'm just gonna throw that out there, really. Woo! Such a belief was clearly contrary to his usual political orientation. Yet, after leaving the trance state, he vehemently defended this belief during an intense film interview with Frank McGee, the television news commentator now deceased. The subject went so far as to create names of places and even began to openly suspect McGee himself. Months later, when the subject viewed his performance on film, he was surprised and baffled at his own behavior. He had total amnesia of the entire film episode. This and many similar clinical experiences have led me to believe that highly hypnotizable individuals are especially vulnerable to certain kinds of outside influence and manipulation. Such individuals may find themselves doing things which are, in some degree, at variance with their normal coded values. In the extreme, it is even possible that they may be manipulated into performing acts of physical violence. Oh, just like Jonestown. Well, Moonies. I hope the stars are hypnotizing you. I gotta say, well, I have some problems with hypnotism. Mainly, well, what are the chances that the patient could just be faking it? You know? That's just, I mean, I concur with, well, DID. I believe DID is a very real psychological problem. People can switch personalities or blank out or dissociate due to traumatic events in their lives. But like I said, what's the probability of a really good actor just switching between characters under the false under the guise of having DID? Just saying. I ask you, audience, can you really tell the difference between a DID patient and a really good actor who can switch between characters pretending to have DID? And while we're on this subject, I really hate the APA. Psychology is a junk science. But whatever. Anyway, let's continue. Alright, all people are prone to being molded by outside influence to some extent. The small group of highly hypnotizable people, when put in the hands of unscrupulous individuals, are even more vulnerable. Another lesson of the film interview with the subject, who had been told to believe that the communists had taken over the networks, is that hypnotized subjects are also vulnerable to deception. Their desire to comply, both in and out of the formal trance, is such that they may convincingly invent information in an effort to give the hypnotist what he seems to want. Oh boy, ah jeez. No, I'll never be invited to do an audiobook reading. They can even deceive themselves. Thus, interviews utilizing hypnotic age regression for the purpose of uncovering information must be performed carefully and dispassionately. Further, external corroborating evidence is crucial for verification of material produced in a regression study. Without external confirmation of data, the possibility of stress hallucination is not ruled out. It is well established, however, that under carefully controlled conditions, highly hypnotizable people can regress in time and uncover incredibly accurate and subtle factual and emotional experiences buried in a remote memory of the past. Man, do you know how effed up that is? I mean, while under a hypnotic state, you suddenly remember a very traumatic event that was beyond your control, and you just really hate yourself now that you remember it. Cease. You should be really glad you're not rich. I mean, if you were most likely abused, if not spoiled. But let's move along. The Control of Candy Jones is a fascinating and compelling book. I believe that John, Candy, and the author, Donald Bain, have struggled to uncover the truth. Although I share in their frustration at the difficulties involved in obtaining external documentation, I was not involved in the actual spontaneous and induced hypnotic age regression with Candy as reported in the book, but it is clear from my work with her that she is capable of such intense hypnotic experiences. Further outside evidence is important in evaluating Candy's story, and I view this book as an interim report. Knowing that Candy, John, and Donald Bain are determined to uncover as much information as possible. John's patience and sensitivity to unexpected cues is matched by Candy's persistent desire to surface all available memories. Finally, I respect their courage in openly pursuing such a troubling and frightening personal story. Herbert Spiegel, M.D. Oh, I see. Ah, geez, that was the book. Man, my desk is falling apart. Oh, so Donald Bain was just the writer, not the psychologist. And the psychologist was a separate person. Okay, okay. I'm willing to bet Herbert Spiegel is another alias. But whatever. Woo! Alright, we're at the introduction. It's been almost 2 years since I was first invited to hear portions of tapes that have been recorded in a cramped East Side apartment shared by John Nebel and Candy Jones, Mr. and Mrs. Nebel. I recall sitting there on a hot and sticky August day in 1974, a drink in my hand, a yellow legal pad on my lap, and a tiny knot of uneasiness in my stomach. I don't understand, I said. I was to say that many times during the long afternoon. Is it all right with you if I play this one? Nebel asked Candy, referring to another cassette. He was to ask her that many times. If he's to be told any of it, he might as well be told all of it, she replied. Cease. Now, ah, geez, please enjoy my audiobook without the stuttering and coughing. That was the beginning of my involvement with the control of Candy Jones. As the afternoon progressed and I was barraged with information, a piece there, a slice there, a colossal material from John and Candy, and from the tape recorder on their coffee table, I found myself caught in a conflict of emotions. I am by nature a cynic, not a skeptic. But I was skeptical that day, not because of any conflict of information, but because the story went beyond that which I wished to believe. I have always been able to accept evil as an abstract symbol, but, like most people, find it more comfortable to deny evil's reality. To accept the evil displayed for me on the tapes would be to accept the resulting fear and anxiety real evil ultimately produces. I prefer to be skeptical. Man, what a pussy. This is what atheism has created in society. It's just subjective morality bullshit. Whoa. But skepticism is an intellectual act, forever at odds with the emotions. I found it impossible to ignore the potency of the Candy Jones tapes. And as they grew in number, I have listened to more than 200 hours of them, and began to consume my professional life. The urgency of their message exposed my skepticism as nothing more than intellectual cowardice. The clever skeptic is never wrong. Wait, let me check something. Alright, the stream is okay. Both YouTube and Twitch are good. Awesome. It took many months of research, writing, and skepticism to complete the control of Candy Jones. Each scrap of recall by Candy had to be placed within the framework of the puzzle. This was often difficult. At times it was impossible. But as with any puzzle, when enough pieces are locked together, the picture is discernible. There have been personal problems too, in seeing this book through publication. John Nebel has been a friend, and the difficulties this project have caused him have to some extent become my problems too. John Nebel is 64 years old. He has cancer. He broadcasts 6 nights a week, 6 hours a night. He sleeps little. Most debilitating, however, has been the anguish of seeing in the woman he loves the tragic results of what others have done to her in the past. Nebel is, and has been for the past 4 years, engaged in a struggle to nullify the control over his wife gained by those other people during a 12-year period. The amount of information contained on the tapes proved to be too unwieldy for transcription from the originals. Total transcription of the tapes would have produced 4,000 to 5,000 single-space pages. Instead, a system was devised in which, as an original tape was played through earphones, I recorded onto another tape recorder my play-by-play of the events on the original. In addition, I used a stopwatch and called out the passing of each minute during individual half-hour segments. The built-in digital counters on the many tape recorders used for this project were calibrated against my new counts. Thus, I was able to go quickly to any point on any original tape, no matter which machine was used, by relating minutes to digit counts. My transcriber, Donna Pellini, transcribed my comments as opposed to the original tapes. Even at that, the condensed transcripts, my comments numbered over 700 single-space pages. Damn, my voice. In addition to the tapes, and there were approximately 60 hours of interviews with John and Candy. Well, my voice is okay. Sit. Sus, dog. Cease. That's my neighbor's dog. And we hit the 30-minute mark. Yay, I guess. A problem of another sort arose when I attempted to trace the pivotal physician directly responsible for the manipulation of Candy Jones. He wasn't found until I began writing the book, and his home and office addresses are now included in my secured files. I have, on the counsel of my lawyers, refrained from contacting him because of possible litigation. You know, I wonder where are Candy Jones' tapes now. I hope they're in a safe place. Maybe I'll find them on the internet someday. Who knows? The story of Candy Jones, as presented on the tapes, points a harsh and critical finger at the Central Intelligence Agency. For while Candy's story does not have the global impact of the CIA's Chilean folly or the Cuban fiasco, it does level a powerful personal condemnation of that agency. One cannot help but consider it more important than those distant misadventures because it is the story of what happened, in a painfully personal way, to one person, Candy Jones, and left her with a nightmare with which to live, perhaps for the rest of her life. I have no quarrel with the CIA as a conceptual entity. I suppose such agencies are unfortunate realities in our tense and global society. Most of these alphabet organizations in America really shouldn't exist. They're unconstitutional anyway. Woo! Me. But when so large and powerful a government agency as the CIA fosters and encourages childhood fantasies of intrigue, adventure, and manipulation within grown men and women, it must stand ready to accept the blame when this grown-up game of cops and robbers goes awry. I have not met a more courageous person than Candy Jones. I refer not to her courage during the years from 1960 to 1972, when her adventures took place, but point my praise and admiration to her dedication and seeing that this book is published. She has expressed to me not only fear for her life, but also the fear that, that one day a reader of this book might look at her and wonder whether the attempts to control and manipulate her for all those years had marked her indelibly. May I simply say to them that Candy Jones, who nightly broadcast beside her husband, Long John Nebel on WMCA in New York City, is one of the sanest women I know. Some final comments. An understanding of hypnosis was a requisite to being able to write this book, and while text provided my introduction to the subject, it was the kind, patient, and generous willingness of experts in the field to explain it to me that provided the necessary understanding. Cease. Woo. Cease. Damn, my voice. Yeah. One such expert is Dr. Herbert Spiegel, a psychiatrist in private practice in New York City and an associate professor of psychiatry at Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons, where he has taught courses in medical hypnosis since 1960. His work in medical hypnosis has begun to revolutionize the field, not only as it applies to hypnosis as a therapeutic tool, but as it relates to the entire concept of psychotherapy. The practice of short-term therapy has been dramatically advanced by Spiegel's work, particularly through his development of the hypnotic induction profile, HIP. This technique has ramifications far greater than enabling a hypnotist to evaluate a potential subject's capacity for hypnosis. The HIP gives every physician an impressively quick and accurate insight into a patient's personality, an invaluable advantage with planning treatment strategies. Cease. Damn. You can just hear the scratchiness in my voice. Sit. 3 other fine physicians, all students of the Spiegel approach to hypnosis and his hypnotic induction profile, added immeasurably to my grasp of the subject. One is Dr. T. London, a New York City psychiatrist in private practice and also on the teaching facility at the New York University Medical Center. Can you excuse me for a minute, chat? I'll be right back. Yo, I'm back. Yoo-hoo! I had to go drink some more water. Cease. Testing. Hope you can hear me. Woo! Testing. Hope you can hear me. Another is Dr. Frederick Dick. Some name there. An internist, perhaps the only one in New York City who regularly incorporates the HIP into routine physical examinations. The third is Dr. Barbara DeBetz, a psychiatrist in private practice in New York City and a colleague of Dr. London at NYU. Dr. Spiegel, London, and Dick have all appeared with me in a Long John Nebulso, which I must admit was a comfortable and convenient way for me to pick their impressive brains over 6-hour periods. I also wish to extend my appreciation to my editor at Playboy Press, Bob Gleason, who offered a sensible blend of hard-nosed judgment and welcome encouragement. Finally, I acknowledge my collaborators on this project, the myriad of tape recorders, large and small, without which there would be no book. Well, now I'm curious. I wonder, I hope there are some recordings of, John Nebel's radio show on YouTube. I really hope so. I really want to watch it. I actually want to hear Candy Jones' voice. Anyway, part 1, chapter 1, The Marriage. The marriage took place in New York City on December 31st, 1972. Ooh. The bride was Candy Jones, born Jessica Wilcox, in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania on that same day in 1925. The groom was Long John Nebel, born Jack Zimmerman in Chicago, Illinois, June 11, 1911. Ugh. He's 14 years older than her. Ugh. Ah, jeez. Well, age gap couples kind of make me cringe, but whatever. Candy Jones had been America's most famous model during the 40s. Her photographs graced the covers of 11 magazines within a single month in 1943. C and Betty Grable constituted World War II's most potent pinup team. Photos of Candy in a white bathing suit with coral dots had been affixed to the corrugated walls of Quonset huts throughout the South Pacific, promising better things to thousands of GIs once the battle was won. Ah, jeez. America shouldn't have gotten involved in World War II. She traveled extensively throughout the war zone. Her presence an injection of stateside softness and the reality of hard war. In 1946, Candy married one of the leaders of the American modeling field, Harry Conover, originator of the CoverGirl concept, with a matching investment of $500 from a young male model who was also his roommate, Gerald Ford, currently the President of the United States. Whoa, what a coincidence. Candy Jones is, indirectly, related to Gerald Ford. What a coincidence. Conover had formed the nation's most prestigious modeling agency. Their marriage was to produce 3 sons: Grief, a divorce in 1959, and Staggering Debt. Following her divorce from Conover, Candy managed to pull together the pieces of a broken marriage and a financially drained business and forge a new life for herself and her young sons. She created a corporation of her own, using the power of her name and reputation to get them moving. She entered the broadcasting field and became a fixture on NBC's network weekend radio service, Monitor. She devoted great amounts of time to charitable causes, was a familiar sight at Broadway openings and cabaret first nights, and maintained her close associations with leaders of show business, politics, and the military establishments. Ah, jeez. Let me tell you, folks, the more you become connected to Hollywood, the media, and politics, the more corrupted you'll become. Trust me, folks. Really. Candy's new husband, Long John Nebel, was New York's most successful radio talk show host. He reigned for 20 years in the midnight till dawn slot, his caustic, strident voice familiar to Manhattan's night people as sirens and honking horns. 6 feet 4 inches tall and as slender as a model, he glided through his nocturnal world shrouded in controversial topics and an extensive wardrobe of fine clothes. Pale, he slept when the sun was up. Even his hair seemed colorless, an imposing figure in an opposing city. John Nebel began his radio career at the age of 43 when WOR, the Mutual Network's New York flagship station, gave Nebel the all-night show. The time slot was known as a hopeless graveyard for announcers, but Long John built it into a lucrative program with a financially loyal following. 8 years later, after money hassles with WOR's management, He moved to WNBC, where he remained for another 8 years. He then switched to WMCA, another all-talk station, where he perpetuated the lure and lore of Nebo at midnight. Throughout his radio career, Nebo had pioneered in opening the airways to controversy. Oh, so he was like Howard Stern. Well, Howard Stern, but less cringy. Possessing only an 8th grade education, he brought with him to broadcasting an extensive background in selling. This, along with an insatiable and intellectual curiosity, enabled him to generate real excitement and electricity. 6 hours a night, 6 nights a week. His interests and the subjects he dealt with were as varied as his background. Jazz, flying saucers, psychiatry, law, ESP, the circus, gold, internal medicine, and hypnosis. Oh, somebody liked the comment they made. John and Candy had met in 1941 when he was working as a freelance photographer. At the height of her career, he'd been assigned a photographer for a major magazine advertisement. They bumped into each other around town over the ensuing years as they pursued their respective careers. But there was little communication. Candy admits to having carried a mildly flickering torch for Nebo in the 60s, but had assumed he was married. He was not. Although he became involved in a series of long-term relationships with various women after his divorce from his first wife Lillian in 1960. Well, dang. I used to think the 1950s were based and promoted marriage and monogamy, but even then people were divorcing left and right. Cease. That's a damn shame. But I digress. Woo! The courtship of John Nebo and Candy Jones was pursued at undergraduate speed. They'd gone together for 28 days prior to the wedding. Nebo's many friends, bemused at his decision to marry again, were unanimous in their favorable response to Candy. Her natural guileless beauty and unaffected warm personality captivated her husband to be his assortment of confidence without exception. This writer included. She was without pretense when associates with models, nor though a tall woman was she the willowy, graceful model type. In fact, she occasionally displayed a disarming awkwardness. Her personality was self-effacing. I have good bones, was her embarrassed answer to a well-meaning praise of her beauty, and a nervous laugh was generally added to soften even that comment. The wedding was held at the lavish, sprawling contemporary apartment of attorney Kenneth Nigan. Or is it pronounced Nigan? Nebo's lawyer. Approximately 40 of John's friends attended the ceremony. Candy's mother was there. A young lady who worked for Candy in her charm and career school was also present. Although more as a companion to Candy's mother than as an invited guest. Strange that Candy has no one here, I commented to my wife. Stranger yet was the change that came over Candy as champagne was poured into silver goblets and finger sandwiches were passed among the guests by uniformed waiters. As Nebo described it in retrospect, something happened that I really can't put into words. You have to have known Candy as I did to notice the change in her. She developed an expression on her face that wasn't Candy. At least not the Candy I come to love. I never seen that expression before. Tense, angry, concerned. I asked her if anything was wrong, and she gave me a curt no. I couldn't believe it was the same woman. I was upset to see her that upset. I chalked it up to the tension of the moment. I work professionally as a musician and have played at hundreds of weddings. Invariably, brides are tense and often become angry at insignificant details. Ah, jeez. This is what mkultra mind control does to people. It makes them shattered, broken individuals. Well, at least without help. And when I mean help, I mean broken individuals to really find God. Yeah, they to really find God. Mm. At any rate, as he chatted with Nebel's friends, attention, covert and unstated, became evident. Nothing major, nothing definitive, simply there. When it was time for the guests to leave, Candy and John stood at the door and bade gracious farewells to each person, as he or she departed from the opulent apartment and prepared to go out into the unusually warm and hazy December day. Some of us would be joining the bride and groom that evening at Ho Ho, the Chinese restaurant, where Nebel annually held court on New Year's Eve as a gesture to a longtime sponsor and to his listeners. John and Candy Nebel were a strikingly handsome couple as they stood side by side at the door. There was no question that Nebel was a happy man at that moment, and there was no reason to question whether Candy shared his pleasure. But a larger and more tantalizing question might have been asked had the events now were to take place in the ensuing months and years been known to the gathered well-wishers. Simply put, the question is, was the woman at John Nebel's side really Candy Jones? Before I move on to the next chapter, I might as well show you this chat. Hold on a minute. Yeah, I'm selling some stuff on Mercari. I'm trying to declutter my place. I'm even selling a bar set. A little over $1,400. I'm selling some hoodies, some old kids' toys, this tiger printed bathroom set. It's really cringe. I really hate animal patterns. They're very cringe. This creepy Aztec warrior statue. This audio cable. Another audio cable. Oh, this 3-port HDMI switch. And this indoor grill that I never used. I'll post the links on my link tree. So stay tuned and I'll let you guys know. We're on Twitter. I'll let you guys know on my community post too. No. Anyway, moving on. Wait, hold on a minute. Bingo. Bingo. Woo. Wait, hold on a minute. Excuse me. Okay, everything's good. Sweet, awesome. Woo! Chapter 2, The Wedding Night. Mr. and Mrs. John Nebel would spend their wedding night in a suite at the Drake Hotel, 56th Street and Park Avenue in New York City. First, however, was the party at Ho Ho. After a brief stop at the Drake to bathe and change clothes, they went by Smith's limousine to the restaurant, which is located on West 50th Street, close to the WNBC studios, from which Nebel had broadcast prior to his move to WNMCA. Ah, jeez. They were in good spirits as the guests began to arrive and join them in the cocktail lounge, a lavishly colorful area of the landmark restaurant, softly lighted and dotted with table groupings and handsome club chairs. Candy, who owns an extensive collection of wigs, had persuaded John to wear a silver one, which caused much laughter around the tables. Faithful listeners, aware that he would be there, presented Nebel with an assortment of gifts, most of which had been personally sewn or baked. At 9, those who were joining John and Candy for dinner accompanied them to the table in the main dining room, which is dominated by huge oil paintings of Chinese pastoral scenes. I'm sorry, chat. Just thinking about something funny. Oh. As steaming platters of house specialties were served and listeners continued to approach Nebel at the table, I again sensed a change in Candy from her previous geniality. She seemed to detach herself from her surroundings, and her answers to questions were terse and without warmth. And again, I thought I had a ready answer for this change in mood. After all, her husband of only a few hours was totally occupied with his fans. He was called to the telephone over a dozen times during the course of the evening to receive the best wishes of friends, and I understood the effect this preoccupation could have on a bride. Candy no doubt would have been happier alone with John on her wedding eve than sharing him with friends, fans, and business cronies. Jeez. Hold on a minute. Jeez. Yes, jeez. I love my new chair, but there's nothing wrong with the new chair, but now it's too big for my desk. But whatever. Woo. Okay, back to the story. Hmm. Actually, Candy was fortunate that New Year's Eve fell on a Sunday night that year. Had it not, she would have been forced to share her husband with a studio microphone following the dinner, because the show has always been Long John Nebel's life. There were no vacations, no nights off, no trips or honeymoons. When Nebel was hospitalized in January 1971, during which confinement his cancer was diagnosed following exploratory surgery, he arranged to leave the hospital each night by limousine and with appropriate bags attached to his body, went to the studio where he did a 6-hour show standing up. Oh, geez. That's some dedication, but why didn't he just rest? Poor John. And I feel sorry for Candy, too. The Nebels departed ho-ho shortly after midnight and went to their suite at the Drake. Recalls Nebel. There was a king-size bed, and we went through the usual preparations for sharing in that bed. Funny, but you can understand how romantic lovers are reluctant to admit they even go to the bathroom or anything like that. I was tempted to go downstairs and use the John in the lobby. Anyway, Candy came out of the bathroom dressed in a beautiful negligee, and I went in. I came out wearing my bikini shorts. I always wear them. I didn't even bring a robe, so Candy gave me one of her caftans. I look kind of faggot, I guess, but I put it on. We got into bed and talked about and then did what you expect newlyweds to do. When it was over, I casually asked whether she was happy. She reached over and grabbed a 4th of July sparkler from the nightstand, lighted it, and held it over our heads. I was thrilled, delighted, commented I felt great. But then, according to Nebel, something strange happened. Candy had left the bed and gone into the bathroom, and when she returned, she said something to him that he cannot recall. What she said is probably irrelevant. However, because it was how it was said that caused a reaction in Nebel. As he describes it, they came out of the bathroom and I saw somebody who resembled the woman I married. I stressed the word resembled. I mean, I knew it was my wife because there was no exits from that bathroom. She was the same height as build as Candy, but she said something to me in an entirely different voice. I don't recall her words, but I do remember her voice was bitter, biting. It was frightening. I asked her what was wrong. She answered, "Nothing's wrong," in a deep voice that had the slicing effect of a razor. I didn't know what else to say, so I went into the sweet's living room. Neville seldom drinks, but he poured a glass of bourbon from a bottle provided by the hotel's management. Did Neville go downstairs in his shorts and the carton or whatever? Captain or whatever. What the heck is a captain? CAFTAN. Okay, now Neville seldom drinks, but he poured a glass of bourbon from a bottle provided by the hotel's management, picked up half a chicken sandwich, and turned on the television to see what was left of New Year's Eve's celebrations from other parts of the country. He called into the bedroom and invited Candy to join him for a drink and a sandwich, which she did. "She seemed to be Candy again," says Neville, "the Candy I married, warm and sweet and lovable." "You're wonderful, John," she said. "You're a wonderful man if you made me the happiest woman on earth." They stood and kissed, and John Neville tried to forget for the moment that other voice that had so jarred him in the bedroom. Oh, jeez. I hope she wasn't possessed. Jeez. I mean, jeez. Oh, we're already at chapter 3. These chapters are pretty short. Oh, we already hit the 1 hour mark. So, yay, I guess. Before we continue with chapter 3, I really want to look up what a captain is. Captain. CAFTAN. What, is that a woman's attire? Wait. Oh, I get it. It's one of those large flowing dresses. It's basically this, chat. That's a captain. I don't see what's the appeal in wearing them, but whatever. Whoop. Chapter 3, the next day. January 1st, 1973, was a crisp, sunny winter's day. After a breakfast of eggs and bacon at the hotel, John and Candy took a walk, hand in hand, along Park Avenue. They bumped into an old Neville friend, the noted attorney O. John Rose, who offered the couple his warm best wishes on their marriage. "We were the happiest couple in the world," says Neville as he looks back at that day. The change in Candy's behavior and voice had been wiped from my mind. Oh, jeez. All right. The next day, Neville made a brief appearance as a guest on a Leon Lewis show on WMCA. He and Candy had dinner that night at another of Neville's favorite restaurants, Antilotti's, on East 49th Street near First Avenue. After dinner, they picked up the newspapers and retired to their suite at the Drake for a leisurely evening of reading, sleeping, and enjoying the novelty of being alone together. Did I just hear something? Whatever. Later that night, they went to the WMCA where Neville did his usual Monday night broadcast. Candy watched with pride as her husband rode through the evening, doing what he has always done better than anyone else in this business. Well, dang. I'm gonna try and find Neville's radio recordings on YouTube. Now I'm really interested. On Tuesday morning, they enjoyed a continental... Cease. Damn. On Tuesday morning, they enjoyed a continental breakfast as they packed in preparation to leave the hotel to return to Nebel's apartment, which would become their home. I'll call the desk and have someone sent up for the bags. Nebel said after finishing his Danish pastry and coffee. Don't bother, I'll take care of everything, said Candy, her face molded into a stern, wrathful expression. John peered across the table. It didn't make much sense to him. Why was he angry? What had caused her such a sudden and drastic shift in her mood? He asked her about it. Was it menopause? Okay, I'll stop. I'm not angry, said the voice through Candy's mouth. But that doesn't mean I have to be happy about everything either. The voice was deep and cutting. What's wrong? Nebel asked. Nothing. Candy looked beyond him with cold eyes. Wishing to avoid a confrontation, Nebel fought the urge to question her further. Instead, he suggested she go to the desk and pay the bill while he waited in the suite for the bellhop. Candy took the money he handed her and left the room. The bellhop arrived, and Nebel accompanied him downstairs, where the limousine was waiting. He was apprehensive about getting into the car with Candy, afraid that what had occurred upstairs would repeat itself in the front of the driver. It didn't. He was met by a smiling and loving Candy Jones Nebel, who kissed her husband on the cheek and squeezed his hand. Once in the apartment, Nebel changed into old slacks, and Candy slipped into a frilly gown. They lay in bed and read the Times and news until it was time for him to go to the studio. He asked Candy to join him, but she declined. She was due at her offices early the next day for meetings. John kissed her good night and left to do his broadcast. Since he was early, he decided to call Candy from the phone in his office. After a brief chat, he went to the studio and greeted his longtime friend, writer, and public relations consultant, Sandy Teller, who was sitting as a panelist on that evening's program. At 5 minutes before airtime, Nebel placed another call home. For some reason, the events at the Drake had resurfaced and caused him to worry. Candy answered, "Everything all right?" Nebel asked, "Of course." Ooh. I love you, Candy. She sighed, and they were silent a moment, and then a voice said, "Why do you always think something is wrong?" It was the same harsh voice Nebel had heard at the Drake. This time there was a hint of mockery. "Candy, what's the matter?" "John, I'm fine." It was Candy's voice again, soft and sleepy. "Candy, what's happening? Your voice is so different and angry sometimes." "John, I've never been angry with you. I have nothing to be angry with you about." Ooh, it's the split personality. Yo. John, I've never been angry with you. I have nothing to be angry with you about. Then why do you act as though you're mad? I don't know, John. I certainly don't feel mad at you for anything. I love you very much. And I love you. I want so much for us to work at this and make it a big success. Nebel continued to tell Candy how much he loved her and about his hopes for the future together. He became aware, however, that there was no response from the other end. Candy? Nothing. He hadn't heard her hang up, and it sounded as though the line were still connected and open. He called her name twice more, still no response. Nebel hung up and ran into the studio. The news was winding up. He'd be on the air with his familiar. "Hi there, this is Long John Nebel. Within a minute." Sandy Teller sensed his upset but didn't have time to ask about it because the red light flashed and Nebel was introducing the show. Once he had it underway, he slipped Sandy a note telling him he had to leave the station for a half hour and to keep things moving. Teller, a veteran of over 200 Nebel shows, smoothly stepped into the host's role as Nebel hurriedly departed, took the elevator to the ground floor, and held a cab at the corner of 7th Avenue and 57th Street. The ride, the ride home only took 5 minutes, but it seemed much longer to him. Telling the driver to wait, he rushed into the building and up to the second floor, opened the door, and went to the small bedroom at the rear. Candy was asleep on the bed, the receiver off the cradle and resting beside her. Nebel gently shook her shoulder. John? Yes. I was talking to you and you just disappeared. What are you talking about? We were talking on the phone and... Is it 6 already? She thought the night had passed and John had returned from work. No, I have a cab waiting downstairs, Candy. You sounded so mad at me on the phone. John, that's ridiculous. I'm not mad at you. Don't you remember talking to me on the phone? Yes, but I wasn't mad. Your voice was different and all, Candy. Look, I have to get back. You must have fallen asleep. Are you alright? Yes, of course. I'm sorry. That's okay. Nebel kissed her and went downstairs and returned to the studio where he took over and guided the guests and panelists through the early morning hours. When Nebel arrived home from the show that morning and prepared to go to bed, Candy was in the bathroom. She entered the bedroom as he was getting into bed. How's the show? She asked. Fine, how are you? Fine, she replied. Look, Candy, I don't want to cause trouble or anything like that, but what the hell is going on here? Cease. What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. The changes in your moods, the anger. I never know what to expect from you. I mean that, Candy. 1 minute you're one thing and then you become something else. That isn't true and you know it. Nebel got up and stood close to her. He placed his hands on her shoulder and looked into her eyes. Candy, something is wrong and I think we better get it settled right now before it goes any further. What is the problem? Candy was annoyed at the questioning. I told you there wasn't any problem. You're imagining everything. Like hell I am. Nebel recited for her a list of times when he noticed her personality change. He concluded by saying, I just wish you'd tell me what's causing it. Candy busied herself at a small desk in the bathroom, and John climbed back in the bed. They said nothing to each other for over 5 minutes. Finally, Candy walked to the bed, sat on it, and touched her husband's face. John, there's something that maybe I should tell you. What's that? It's just something that I never even thought was worth mentioning, but maybe it is. There are times when I might have to take a trip. For what? I want to give a lecture or something like that. I'm not sold on that idea, said Nebel, sitting up. He expanded on his negative reaction to her announcement. Candy listened patiently to his protest. When he was finished, he stood up and leaned on the bookcases that lined one wall of the bedroom. John, there's more to it than just giving a lecture. She told him briefly and simply that she had in the past done some work for one of our government's agency. See what I mean? Don't trust the government, folks. Don't trust Langley. Really. Cease. Yo. I know my voice is weird, but I still want to do these read-alongs with you, my dear Moonies. Really. Boo. Boo. Nebel lighted a cigarette and questioned her about what she just said. She seemed willing to answer his questions and told him that after her divorce from Harry Conover in 1959, she'd been approached by the FBI. What did you do for them? Nebel asked. Very little. They used my offices as a mail drop, and I carried a few messages for them. Nebel found the revelation interesting, of course, but did not attach great significance to it. He asked whether she was still involved, and she said she wasn't. After she left, Nebel lighted another cigarette and sat on the edge of the bed to think. At first, he found the fact that his wife had performed undercover work for the FBI amusing. The circumstances under which he had been approached were mundane. Once he could accept the fact that such agencies as the FBI routinely enlist the part-time services of thousands of average citizens to accomplish its goals. Goals with which Neville always been in philosophical agreement. But as he reflected upon the story Candy had told him about first being approached by the FBI agent, he began to feel uneasy. Was that all there was to it? He wondered aloud. Oh boy. So, chat, how would you feel if you had a partner that had various personality changes and they suddenly admitted they used to work for the government? Very suspicious. Oh, excuse me. Ooh. Anyway, my dear Moonies, don't marry anyone who works for the government. Really. Heed my advice. mm. Mm. Chapter 4. Unconscious recollection of childhood. Candy Jones' mother was named Jessica Wilcox, and she named her only daughter after her. The name, however, was not the only manifestation of Candy's mother's desire to leave her imprint on her daughter. There was also her harsh, unforgiving, stiff-kneed Puritanism, believing the world, and particularly its men, to be inherently evil. Mrs. Wilcox brought up her daughter on a tight rein. Had she had her way, Candy would have attended secretarial school, which, according to her mother's logic, would have headed off any notions her daughter might have had about venturing into more exotic and, by extension, more dangerous avenues. The mother's attitude towards men was not without cause. Candy's father had left them when she was 3. He was James Gordon Wilcox, preferring to be known as J. Gordon Wilcox to better reflect his status in the business world. Not that he was a financial titan. He met and courted Candy's mother while working as a ticket taker at the Capitol Theater in Wilkes-Barre, and their courtship was condemned by both families. J. Gordon Wilcox lived in Kingston, a less than desirable area, according to the residents of the Wilkes-Barre proper. He was also a Polish Catholic, a deadly combination for Ella Mae Jevons, Candy's maternal grandmother. What's so bad about the Poles? Really? I mean, they're really traditional. And one day I would like to visit Poland. For some reason, Poles are also hated on 4chan's pole board, but I digress. But there was undoubtedly more than simple snobbery and religious prejudice influencing Ella Mae. She divorced her husband, Arthur Rosengrant, when her daughter and a son, Eugene, were small, and while she enjoyed a more liberal and accepting view of life than did Candy's mother, she certainly saw the effects of her own broken marriage in the way she reacted to the pending wedding of J. Gordon and Jessie. She was firmly against it, which accomplished nothing more than to hasten the inevitable. The couple wed, and after a brief stay in a grandmother's house, moved to Buffalo, New York, where J. Gordon became a car salesman for the Packard Company. Shortly thereafter, the firm sent him to their Atlantic City operation, which brought the couple closer to home and which introduced Candy's mother to that resort area. Then a fashionable mecca of clean air, white sand, elegant hotels, and a gentle modus vivendi. That latter attribute of Atlantic City was important to Jessie Wilcox, for she did have pretensions for herself and for her daughter, who was born a year later. The fruits of those pretensions were not to be realized. However, with J. Gordon Wilcox at her side, he worked hard in Atlantic City and became Packard's top salesman. He simultaneously took advantage of the many available women in the convention city. Oh, jeez. Cease. Damn. Tall and slender, with a penchant for gab, he came home to his bride less and less. Finally, when Candy was 3, her mother moved back to the grandmother's house on Cary Avenue. I never knew my father until I was older, Candy reflects. In fact, I don't recall any men in my life when I was very young. My mother's brother visited once in a while, but only to see how much money he could get from my grandmother. He was a jeweler in San Francisco and had driven an ambulance during World War I. That's all I know about him. When he did arrive, my mother would usually say, "Well, here he is. I wonder how much he's going to ask for this time." Ask for this time. Cease. The first visit by Candy's father that she recalls occurred when she was about 4, 1 year after her mother split from him. He had dinner at the house, following which the mother and grandmother left him alone with his daughter. They sat together in the living room, the child perched demurely on the couch, and silently watched her father, a figure as imposing in the large dim room as the bulky dark pieces of furniture. "I have to leave now," he told the child after 15 minutes. She didn't respond. "Aren't you sorry that I'm leaving?" "No," Candy answered. "Good little girls would be sorry when their daddy leaves," said Wilcox. Candy didn't know what she was supposed to say or do. She didn't know that the term daddy bothered her. She referred to him as Mister during the meal, and although he tried to hide his displeasure at having his daughter use so formal a term, it was evident to her. "Won't you cry when I leave?" Wilcox asked. "No." Well, this dumbass didn't pay. Well, he didn't pay attention to his child. Of course, Jessica's gonna be formal around him. She barely knows her father. Cease. If he was angry at her answer, he concealed it. "Of course he'll cry," he said. "No, I won't." "Well, I have to go." He rose from his chair and held out his hand to her. She took it and allowed him to lead her toward the kitchen. Instead of going into the kitchen, however, he opened the door that led to a butler's pantry. Inside, damn, sit. Sorry, chat. Inside, he opened a drawer and pulled out a silver nutcracker. "I can make you cry," he said. Oh no. "I don't cry," Candy said. Wilcox placed one of Candy's fingers in the nutcracker and squeezed. She closed her eyes against the pain and fought against the tears. He sandwiched another finger into the nutcracker and squeezed harder. Candy would have cried had not her mother opened the door to the pantry. Like, what the fuck, dude? Seriously? Dude, that's messed up. But, like I said earlier, rich people tend to abuse their children and turn them into unfeeling psychopaths. Most likely, well, in order to run the business, the family business. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Just playing a little game," Wilcox replied, tossing the nutcracker into the drawer. "Weren't we, doll?" he asked Candy, using a nickname that had been with her since infancy. His tone carried the ring of warning to the child. "Yes," doll answered, pressing her bruised knuckles against her side. "Just having fun," said Wilcox. "Come on, doll, give Daddy a kiss before he leaves." Candy kissed his cheek, and he gave her a hug. After he left, Candy went to a Victorian chest in the dining room and picked up a framed photograph of her father that he'd given her at dinner. She drew it to the floor and smashed her heel into it. "Stop that," her mother screamed, picking up the frame of cracked glass and holding it away from Doll. "I've never understood why my mother saved our photographs," says Candy. "She supposedly hated my father and was always ready to take him to court for non-payment of child support." Cease. The supposedly white family is acting very unemployed, if you know what I mean. Candy's exposure to her father was minimum over the next 10 years. At 5, she was invited to visit with his parents in Kingston, Pennsylvania. A man picked her up and drove her to their home, which Candy recalls was impressive. Her grandfather raised Doberman pinschers, and Candy was allowed to pet them. Her father had many brothers and sisters, and they seemed young and carefree compared to the older atmosphere of her own home. They were all wearing tennis clothes, says Candy, and there seemed to be dozens of cousins. I was introduced to all of them and loved it. Mostly Candy remembers sitting on her grandfather's knee. He held her away from him and stared at her for a long time. People commented that she looked like her father. Others said she would grow to look up like her grandmother, who according to Candy had the face of a porcelain doll, blonde with brown eyes. Everyone seemed to have red hair and blue eyes in her father's family except his mother, and they were all fair-skinned. When the same man drove her home early that afternoon, there were fire engines in front of her house, and her mother was standing outside, arms crossed. Candy ran to her, eyes wide with excitement. "What happened?" she asked. "There is a fire," her mother replied. "It's all over now." A few minutes later, Candy was taken to her room and shown the results of the fire. The furnace had ignited and sent flames racing through the ductwork. The furnace had ignited and sent flames racing through the ductwork. Candy's bed was scorched where flames had flashed from the register on the wall next to her bed. "Did you enjoy your day?" her mother asked. "Yes. It's just as well as you went. The fire happened when you would have been taking your nap." During her courtship with Long John Nebel, Candy had little to say about her childhood. She did discuss her father with John, and naturally he met her mother, with whom she had lived at 1199 Park Avenue, but in response to his questions about the general quality of her early years, she seldom said more than "it was lonely." "Did you have any friends?" Nebel would ask. "No. My mother didn't like my having friends." Oh no. The loneliness of Candy Jones' early life was tempered by her love of animals and by her grandmother Ella Mae Jevons, divorced before the turn of the century, unconventional behavior for the era. Ella Mae set about supporting her two children, as well as other family members. A younger brother who worked in one of the paint stores owned by Ella Mae's side of the family was forever dipping into the till to pay gambling debts. Her younger sister Kate, prone to hypochondria, married an unambitious employee of the Pennsylvania Railroad. Brother and sister and their families lived in two of the more than 20 houses owned by Ella Mae. 20 houses, goddamn. Sit. There was always talk of paying rent, but it never materialized. Candy to this day has notes for as much as $5,000 each, signed by various family members to her grandmother. When a depression embraced Wilkes-Barre in 1929, Candy's grandmother lost virtually everything except the house on Cary Avenue and the house on Lake Nwangala. Her cash had filled with the banks, and all the remaining houses owned by her were repossessed when she failed to pay taxes. Despite these reverses, Ella Mae survived by virtue of her own foresight and resourcefulness. She had, at the time of her divorce, taken an unusual step for a woman in those pre-fem lib days. A nurse by training, she enrolled in an osteopathic college in Philadelphia and earned her degree. She then opened offices in Wilkes-Barre's finest downtown office building, which overlooked the square. Occasionally, Candy was allowed to watch as her grandmother, who Candy always called Mama, manipulated her patient's arms and legs in search for a cure for their elusive ailments. A proud and handsome woman who wore high heels which increased her already greater than average height. She stood above 5 feet 7 inches tall and looked taller because of her rigidly erect posture. Ella Mae and Long John Nebel's Argot knew how to turn a classical buck. With her patients as a captive market, she organized them for summer tours of Europe to support her own yearly month-long jaunts to the continent. Depression be damned. She took random medical courses at the Sorbonne in Paris. and attended for 3 consecutive decades performances of the Passion Play produced every 10 years in the Bavarian village of Obermaragal. She would return from her European trips with expansive tales of the people and places she's seen, and always with gifts for doll. By the age of 5, Candy owned 2 fur coats, one black and one white, gifts from Mama. She had also learned rudimentary French from her grandmother, who spoke French and German fluently. hmm. The house on Cary Avenue, in which Candy grew up, had 16 rooms and was painted battleship gray. Deep, graceful porches ran the length of the front of the house and along one side. Neighboring houses were of a similar size. Hold on, let me check. Let me check something, chat. Twitch is okay, and so is YouTube. Sweet, sweet. Yoo-hoo! The first floor parlor was the largest room. It was dominated by a black piano, decorated with rococo carvings that were a source of frustration for Candy, whose Saturday chore it was to polish the piano. A black lacquer roll-top desk stood next to the piano and was precious to Candy's mother. Nothing was ever to be placed upon it. 3 floor-to-ceiling windows were hung with heavy gold and purple festoon draperies. The colorful drapes caught the bright hues of the huge oriental rug. That too was sacred to her mother. The draperies were always closed. The square dining room, whose windows overlooked a garden, was separated from the living room by sliding panels. Candy much preferred the sunny room to the darkness of the living room. The table could seat 12, but it seldom served more than Candy. Her mother and her grandmother, mother and grandmother, sat at opposite ends, while Candy sat on the long side between them that faced the windows. The upstairs front bedroom was shared by Candy and her mother. The wallpaper bouquets of violets against a buff background covered the walls, and 5 large windows overlooked the room of the front porch. The mother's portion of the room contained a highboy, another dresser, and a vanity table with a frilly shaded lamp, and a tray holding bottles of perfumes. A tortoise set of brush, comb, shoehorn, nail buffer, and round powder box. Each item was positioned carefully and never varied. What the heck is a highboy? I want to look it up. Hold on a minute. Let's see. Oh, is it a type of dresser? Oh, I get it. Oh, those very tall dressers. I see. Well, that's a highboy. It's very old style, very classic. Oh well. Oh well, let's move along. Oh, you learn something new. You learn something new every day, chat. Woohoo! Oh, we reached the 1 hour 30-minute mark. Well, technically it's 1 hour 32 minutes, but yay. Woo! Candy's bed was on the far wall, next to the furnace register. She had a child's dresser, a coat tree, and a small clothes closet. It was a sunny, pleasant room, Candy recalls, the floors polished to a high gloss by Pearl's elbow grease. Funny, but I actually believe that Pearl has some magic ingredient in her elbows that made wood shine. I asked her about it one day, and she straightened me out. Adjacent to the front bedroom was a narrow hall that ran 20 feet and then made a swipe left into Mama's area. Sconces with amber Flame-shaped balls lighted the hallway. Ceiling to floor, purple velour drapes covered bookcases that ran the length of the hall. Their cells bulged with Mama's extensive collection of medical books, journals, and file folders. Mama's bed was brass, and the air was heavy with the scent of lilac. She soaked little cotton pads in lilac perfume and pinned them beneath her bed bolster into the curtains. A large half hemisphere of amber glass covered the triple ceiling bulbs. There were more file folders, medical journals, and travel brochures piled everywhere, and a massive dressing table with mirrors that pulled out and surrounded you on 3 sides. Seated before it, you can see 7 images of yourself. Oh, that's cool. I must admit, I really do like, old-style houses. I'm a sucker for Victorian houses as compared to modern houses. But alas. Let's see. Mama's area of the house held for Doll a mysterious and foreboding quality, as well as a magnetic force that drew her to it almost daily. Mama could be stern, but she seldom scolded Doll for playing with her clothes or arranging tea parties on her massive dresser for the cadre of imaginary friends created by Doll to fill her reclusive hours. Her mother, on the other hand, perhaps resenting her child's growing closeness to her grandmother and diminishing closeness to her, became an increasingly demanding taskmaster. A nervous woman, Jessie Wilcox established and maintained a smoldering hold on her daughter. She insisted that Doll become proficient in sewing and painting by the age of 6, and enforced this demand with a writing crop that was always within arm's reach. Ah, jeez. A wrong stitch or a carelessly drawn line would bring a sharp crack across the back of Doll's knees with the crop. Doll's mother was careful, however, not to use the crop when Mama was present, because the grandmother would intercede on Doll's behalf. To cover the whelps made by the crop, Doll was made to wear long skirts and little stockings that reached over the knees. My mother was an excellent swimmer and horsewoman, Candy recollects. She loved the outdoors, and I learned to love it too. She also sailed and played tennis. I never played tennis, but I could swim by the time I was 3, and was riding horses by the time I reached 5. Damn, poor Candy. Summer in the outdoors provided Doll with an escape from the confining atmosphere of the large creaking house and from her mother's unbending discipline. With her dog and cat, Doll would often spend the entire day outside. She loved to fish, or to simply sit at the edge of Lake Nwangala and daydream about her life as it would someday be. She would stay out until dark, or until called by her mother. When summer waned, a profound sadness engulfed her, for it meant a fall and winter inside, with only Mama's comforting presence to soften the routine and to temper her mother's nervous outburst. Damn. Candy had a pretty rough childhood. I feel sorry for her. It just goes to show you that money can't buy happiness. During the school term, Doll was expected to come directly home, sit down, and complete all homework. Then she was to do her chores. She would dress for dinner, which was always served at 5, and would speak only when spoken to during the meal. At 6, she was to be in bed. It wasn't until she turned 12 that her bedtime was extended to 7 o'clock. My mother didn't want me to bring any friends home from school because they would mess up the house. She was very nervous about that. Doll's only real playmate during the winter months was a black girl, the daughter of their laundress, whom the laundress affectionately called Snowflake. They were allowed to play together for only brief periods, and even those times were infrequent because Snowflake only came to the house with her mother on rare occasions. In the summer, there were a few other children to play with, particularly when Doll and her mother ventured to Lake Nwangala. But in the winter, there were only the occasional But in winter there were only the occasional meetings with Snowflake. And of course, there was Mama's huge dressing table with its 3 mirrored panels, in which Doll could see her imaginary friends when they joined her for tea. Mama always enjoyed having tea parties at her dresser. No, Mama always enjoyed my having tea parties at her dresser, says Candy, but only if I didn't dress up in her mules. She was always bringing back new mules from Paris, and I loved wearing them when I had my imaginary tea parties. My mother hated me daydreaming like that, though, and got very mad when she caught me at it. Mm. Doll was caught by her mother many times. No, Doll was caught by her mother at many things, and when the letter writing crop was out of reach, our Mama was within protective proximity, Doll was often punished by being locked in a small bedroom on the 3rd floor. Daytime punishment of this type was not nearly as traumatic as when it occurred at night, because her mother often removed all light bulbs from the room prior to remanding Doll to it. Doll would sit in the dark for hours, at times quiet, at times crying and pleading with her mother to unlock the door. Mama lost patience with this form of punishment too, however, and would release Doll from the room over Jessie's vehement objections. Ah, jeez. Supposedly Chris Chan was locked into a room when he was around 2 years old. And that's what caused him, to be silent. That's really fucked up. It became an increasing game of tug-of-war between mother and grandmother, with Doll in the middle. Doll faced each day with the hope that Mama would be home, and her mother away. Jessie's absences were infrequent, however. She was not a social person, preferring to remain at home and sew. She was particularly fond of sewing Doll's clothing, and often chastised Doll for indifference to dolls. She belonged to the local church, and played cards one evening a week, an evening which, unknown to her, was precious to her daughter. My mother was Catherine the Great, Catherine Hepburn, and Tom Mix. She rode a mean saddle while in her 60s, all rolled up in one to me, says Candy. I used to stand for what seemed hours and watch her brush her long chestnut hair, and then I go to my room and do the same, pretending to be her. I loved her very much, and was in awe of her. She was such an imposing woman, but could turn right around and come up with the most marvelous stunts, usually to my mother's horror. One stunt Mama enjoyed was to flip a dinner plate out the dining room window to see if she could scale across the driveway and have it land without breaking. Let's open a window and invite the sunshine in, Mama would say to Doll, smiling at the child's knowledge of what was coming. Out went the plate, a china frisbee catching the sun as it skinned over the driveway and slid to a stop unbroken on the soft green grass. Me too, Mama, Doll giggled, reaching for a plate. But her mother was quicker. She raced to the window, slammed it shut, and drew the curtains. What will the neighbors think? She asked angrily. They won't think because they don't think, Mama answered. They won't because they can't. It was a stock routine between Doll's mother and grandmother, and it invariably caused the mother to stomp off in a rage. Once he left the room, Doll and Mama would look at each other and laugh. Everything was different when I was with Mama, Candy reflects. There always seemed to be love and laughter when she was around. When she wasn't, there was anger and nervous outbreaks by my mother. Obvious mental illness. And threats, always threats, that she'd do something bad to me if I made her nervous again. One of her worst threats was that she'd give me away to the orphanage. The orphanage was on South Franklin Street, across the avenue from one of the houses owned by Mama. It was a 3-story red brick building surrounded by a 10-foot iron spike fence. One day, Candy's mother planned to take some fudge to the orphanage, as well as some of the clothes Candy had outgrown. She did this 3 or 4 times a year, but on the day, she insisted Candy accompany her. Candy was 6 at the time. "Why do I have to go?" Candy asked her mother. "To give you an idea of how it looks, in case I have to give you to them," was her mother's reply. Candy was frightened, but when her mother asked whether she said goodbye to her dog, Sandy, and to Tommy, her cat, the child really panicked. She raced upstairs, found the cat, and cradled him in her arms on the floor of her bedroom. "Jesus loves me, this I know, 'cause the Bible tells me so," she crooned to Tommy, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Come down here," her mother yelled from the foot of the stairs. Candy put the cat back in a hat box in her closet and joined her mother in the downstairs hallway. They took a bus to the orphanage, rang the bell at the gate, and were escorted into the building by the superintendent, a fat, greasy woman with a straight pencil line for eyebrows. Candy's mother followed the superintendent into her office, leaving Candy in a large dining room. A girl of 10 came in with a pail and mop to clean the floor, and nervously eyed Candy as she went about her chore. After a few minutes, Candy walked to the large windows that looked out over the rear yard where children were playing. A small girl cried because she'd been hit by the ball, an old sock with an orange inside of it. Candy watched until the girl with the pail and mop asked quietly, "Are you new here?" "No," Candy replied, avoiding the girl's eyes. Moments later, her mother and the superintendent entered the dining room. "It's time to go," her mother said. Candy burst into tears and hugged her mother's silk-clad legs. "I promised to be good," Candy said. "I'm sorry for this display," her mother told the superintendent. "She's a very nervous child. She takes after me." They left the orphanage, the acrid smell of ammonia from the scrub pail etched into Candy's nostrils and mind. "Losing my grandmother was the worst fate that could have befallen me," says Candy as she reflects on the days leading up to Mama's death. "I knew she was dying one day, and I sneaked into her bedroom and sat at her bedside. She'd been very ill, and when I saw her looking so sick, I began to cry. Tears are best for washing out embedded eyelashes," said Mama, as she took the child's hand. "Besides, doll, I shall always be close to you. I shall be watching over you, just as you one day shall watch over those whom you love." Later, when Mama's death was imminent, she told her granddaughter at her bedside, "Take care of your mother. She needs help, love, and affection." Doll brushed Mama's hair in anticipation of a visit by the doctor, and when he arrived, she waited outside the bedroom door. "How's Mama?" Doll asked him when he emerged from the bedroom. "Just fine," replied the doctor. "Your grandmother will be fine." 6 months later, at the age of 65, Mama succumbed to cancer. Doll was 11. Poor Doll. In the late summer of 1936, Jessie Wilcox packed up and moved herself and her daughter back to Atlantic City, where Doll, now too old to be called that, enrolled in high school. "I was only 5 feet tall when we moved to Atlantic City," says Candy, "but I grew 8 inches during my 4 years of high school. My mother said it was the air, and maybe it was. There's a lot of foul air in Wilkes-Barre because of all the coal mining and a lot of tuberculosis. I had diphtheria when I was a child. Atlantic City was a nice place to grow up." Oh, how the times have changed. At 16, Candy, then called Jessica in school, decided she wanted to go to college and wanted to be a doctor like my grandmother, but her mother refused to spend money on such frivolity. Without telling her mother, Candy wrote a letter to her father, Jake Gordon Wilcox, who had left the auto industry and was working in the sales and publicity department of Paramount Pictures in Chicago. She told him of her plans to attend college and asked him to send her money. 2 weeks later, she received a package from Chicago. It was in the bank draft for $200 and a large doll. The doll, he said in the accompanying note, was for his 16th birthday. I knew that even in 1941, $200 wasn't going to get me to college. College, says Candy. My mother cast a bank draft and used it to pay bills. I sifted gears and tried to decide what to do after graduation. My mother was adamant about my attending secretarial school. Although she had included nurses training as an option, I didn't either, because I made a move that was, I suppose, pivotal in terms of leading me into the modeling field. I entered the Miss Atlantic City contest that year as the Girl Scouts entry and won. Wow, good for you, Candy. Sweet. Although Miss Atlantic City was not an entrant in the Miss America contest held in that city each year, she did act as official hostess at the beauty pageant and received substantial publicity during the week-long affair. 16-year-old Candy was thrilled. Her mother was not. She sat silently in a Traymore hotel as the contestants, led by her daughter, Miss Atlantic City, made a grand sweep of the vast ballroom before such luminaries as the governor of New Jersey, the mayor of Atlantic City, network broadcasters, Jimmy Dorsey and his orchestra, which featured the singer Bob Herbelay and Helen O'Connell, modeling star John Robert Powers, 20th Century Fox fashion commentator Vivian Donner, and opera singer Conrad Tybalt. Thousands packed the ballroom and watched as Candy did her best to walk gracefully in glass slippers several sizes too small for her. Wow, ain't that something? Which had been placed on her feet by an official Prince Charming. The blooming tones of the steel pier. Sweet. Oh, okay. Audio's good. Alright. The booming tones of the steel pierced official announcer filled the room as Candy tried to catch her mother's eye and hopefully a smile, but her mother sat impassively, eyes straight ahead as the excitement of the moment, the music, the overzealous announcer, the applause, the smile of the 1,000 guests in the room swelled to a crescendo that left the young girl dizzy. At the completion of the grand parade, Candy was swamped with newspaper men and women asking for interviews. A reporter from the Atlantic City Press Union asked, somewhat hopefully, whether her unusual manner of walking stemmed from a childhood bout with polio. The public relations man from the Atlantic City Press Bureau stepped in and tried to establish an orderly system for interviewing his city's reigning queen. Candy overlooked the heads of the reporters in search of her mother and spotted her leaving the ballroom. Candy broke away and pushed through clusters of guests until she reached the doors and finally the lobby, where she caught her mother, about to depart the hotel. Where are you going? Candy asked as he called with her. This is the beginning of the end, Jessica. Her mother said resolutely, This is the start of your downfall. Good night and goodbye. With her mother gone, Candy went about her chores as hostess to the Miss America pageant. She was interviewed by all of the media, including the Coast to Coast network radio. At 3 the next morning, she was accompanied home by her official chaperone. Her mother was awake. Hang your dress, because you may wish to wear it again sometimes, she told her daughter, and set your hair. Good night, Mother, Candy said. Her mother did not respond. I hadn't felt that bad since my 11th birthday. Candy recalls of that night and morning in Atlantic City. It was all so clean and pure and innocent, but my mother made me feel so dirty. The 11th birthday Candy referred to had been celebrated in Wilkes Barre. It fell on a Saturday that year, which meant there were additional chores for her to do since Pearl did not work on the weekends, and Candy was expected to fill the gap. She came down the back stairs on the morning of her birthday and dusted the dining room, living room, and hallways. She knew there would eventually be some celebration of her birthday because she'd seen a wrapped package in the dining room. Her mother came downstairs at 10 and went directly to the kitchen. She called for her daughter to join her there. Here, said her mother, handing Candy a scrub brush, a pail, and a bar of naphtha soap. You're old enough to clean the kitchen floor. I want it spotless. Candy got down on her knees and scrubbed the floor, which was large enough for roller skating. It was dirty with cinders and coal soot, and it took her almost 2 hours. The job completed, she called her mother in to inspect. It looks all right, said her mother, returning quickly to the sitting room where she'd been writing a shopping list. 10 minutes later, Candy was summoned to the dining room. Her mother had set the table for breakfast. Candy's gift package was at her place, along with a large gray envelope. They sat at the table, and her mother picked up the envelope and handed it to her, saying, "Well, here's your first present of the day." Candy looked at the envelope. It had been mailed from New York, and it was addressed to her mother in Wilkes Barre. Candy opened the envelope and withdrew the hardcover book. It contained a teenage instructional manual about sex and pregnancy. Really? You want to give that to an 11-year-old? Oh, hey, Clowny, what's up? Yo, dude, thanks for joining my stream. Woo! Oh, nice to see you, Clowny. I'm reading a book about a successful model who suffered from, dissociative identity disorder, and who just so happens to work for the government. Apparently, the book I'm reading is called The Control of Candy Jones. And if you read the VOD of the stream, it's obvious he must have been suffering from mkultra programming. And also, right now, she also had an awful childhood with an abusive mother and a wayward father. Let's see, Clowny Gaming, anytime us internet cycles gotta stick together. A schizovid, color me socked. Yeah, but still, Candy Jones, she was more of a model than a government employee. It sounds to me that I think she was kind of forced into working for the government. If you watch this VOD, you'll see what I mean. And if you're interested, pick up the book The Control of Candy Jones by Donald Bay. It's published under Playboy Press, surprisingly. And like I said earlier, did you know that Hugh Hefner, he also had FBI connections? It really makes you think. But I digress. Let's continue. Thanks for joining the stream, dude. And also, if you want to donate, the links are in the description. Let's see. Clowny, you said, I'll check it out. Yeah, Hef was a total fed. Yeah. It's for you, her mother said. Go to your room and read it. If you ever have a baby, I'll kill you. Candy stayed in her room until early afternoon and read her gift book. She didn't want to read it because of what it represented, a threat from her mother. But she was afraid not to read it, in case her mother asked questions about its contents. After lunch, Candy was allowed to open her other gifts. She received a pair of pajamas and 2 Nancy Drew books. Her birthday cake was maple walnut, with thick, creamy icing. She was allowed to listen to the radio that night until 9, but pleaded with her mother to be allowed to stay up to see the new year in. Reluctantly, her mother agreed to wake her a few minutes before midnight. She did as she promised, saying to her daughter, "Your birthday is ending, Jessica." Candy got up from bed and went to her window, which looked out over the street in front of the house. Lights were burning brightly in other houses as celebrants poised for the sound of the miner's whistle that would herald midnight. The whistle was used to signify changes of sips. Ugh. The whistle was used to signify changes of shifts at the mines, but there was no midnight shift on New Year's Eve. Candy had made confetti from brown and orange wrapping tissue, and took the brown paper bag filled with it from her closet. She opened the window and looked down the sloping black roof, patched with ice, and at the giant maples and elms that dominated the front lawn, their branches salograms against the snow on the ground. The whistle blew and Candy leaned out the window and tossed her confetti and banged together 2 kitchen pans she brought to her room after dinner. A neighbor's door opened and people spilled onto the front walk. Happy New Year, Candy yelled to them, banging her pants. They looked up, saw her, and returned her greeting. Tommy the cat slipped past her and onto the roof. Candy watched as he carefully navigated the ice and sniffed the colorful confetti that had stuck to the icy patches. Tommy, come back in, she said, you'll fall. She made coaxing noises and the cat returned to the window and leaped inside. Candy closed the window and slipped beneath the covers on her bed. The cat joined her. She said her prayers. Always her prayers were long. It included hopes for peace and love for all poor and sad people, and for all four-legged animals. And always her prayers ended with, and please God, make me a better girl tomorrow, so that mother won't be so nervous with me. Oh, poor girl. Chapter 5, the first tape. Honestly, I'm gonna end the stream here. And wow, we've almost hit the 2-hour mark. Sweet, guys. Anyway, thank you for joining for this read-along stream with me. And make sure you pick up The Control of Candy Jones. Honestly, who would have thought a 4chan post would actually lead me to this novel? Really. Well, Moonies, thank you for watching our stream. Our main channel is Moonlight Artist on YouTube. Over already. Well, Clowny, this stream started at 10 a.m. I know some of you guys don't wake up really early, but well, sometimes I like to do some streams in the morning. 4chan always knows. Yep, Clowny. Anyway, main channel is Moonlight Artist. Gaming channel, Moonlight Gaming, which you'll see on our YouTube channel. And I have a Twitter, an Instagram, a Facebook, a Telegram, and Discord, and many other social media sites. And check out our art stores such as Etsy, ArtStation, our Spring store, all of our socials are on our All My Links page and Linktree. Let's see. Clowny, you were cutting down trees all morning? Oh dang. That's pretty cool, dude. Oh, don't worry about it. You can always watch the VOD. Anyway, Moonies. Oh, and also check out our manga series, Awaiting Death with Disease-chan on Namikomi, which you'll also find on our All My Links profile. And we also have another series called Gotcha Girls. It's basically just fan comics, parodying. It makes fun of Genshin Impact and Fate Grand Order. Alright? Parodying. What is up with my pronunciation? And what is up with my voice? Damn. Anyway, Moonies. Well, thank you for joining our stream. And maybe next week we'll continue the story of The Control of Candy Jones. It's very enthralling. Nevertheless, see you on the other side of the moon. And bye, nibbas. Bye, niggas. Don't forget to donate. Thank you.